about the background to our Heritage at Risk programme at what was English Heritage, now Historic England. But then move on to some thoughts about how we frame this type of work, the types of work you've been seeing, in a world that's increasingly concerned with scrutiny of public funds, the availability of hard cash, and a bit more reflective about why we do things in the first place. So Heritage at Risk, who cares? Well, this is the Eleanor Cross in Northampton, on the outskirts of Northampton. It's the second best preserved example of 3. There were 12 built originally in the 1290s. And the people huddled under the umbrella in the rain on a miserable day care enough to subject themselves to this sort of environment to talk about how to address this monument being at risk. I'll say a bit more about that later. So some context. The first register of all listed buildings at risk was published in London in 1991. This wasn't the first attempt at trying to categorise buildings in terms of their condition. There had been other surveys, there had been other attempts to do this, but it was the first time that English Heritage had put something together to look at a place as a whole and say, what are the priorities? What are we most concerned about? In 1998, that went countrywide. It was a sort of test there in London, as London is for many things, and then it was rolled out across the country. And this was the first national register of buildings at risk. Buildings at risk, nothing else. Buildings and structural scheduled monuments were allowed as well. But in 2008, this was widened out to other forms of heritage. So we've got structural scheduled monuments there, but we've also got registered battlefields, wreck sites, and then parks and gardens come along. Places of worship, which had only been included occasionally, became a theme. A huge piece of survey work was done to try and assess the state of the nation's places of worship. But largely, the register is compiled not through systematic survey, but through correspondence. And this is where, again, you come in. It's so important that we get the feedback. It's so important that we get to hear about the highly graded buildings that are at risk. It's so important that we get to hear how they're doing, what the problems are. Are things accelerating? Are they ameliorating somewhat? It's not that the register in itself is a solution. It's not. But it's a starting point. It's a focal point. It's saying, these are the things that we're going to have most difficulty with. If you've got some spare cash, if you want to know what to do with your resources, if you want to know where the priorities ought to be, it's right here in Heritage at Risk registers. And we know that there are other forms of register. There's grade registers maintained by local authorities on grade 2 buildings, for example. Mostly we can't touch grade 2 buildings, I'm afraid. We have to focus on the 1 and 2 stars. But nevertheless, many of you will be familiar with this and our wines for information every year. The Heritage at Risk launch, at which we promote the buildings that have come on, the buildings that have come off. Like I say, it's a focal point. We think it's tremendously important. And the nature of the register is interesting in the light of today's topic about disasters. We are dealing with disasters and the results of unforeseen events. Of course, this creates risk and it creates problems. This is the wonderful little church of St George in Golthoe, Lincolnshire, now a deserted village. There's nothing else there but this wonderful 16th, 17th and 18th century church, lovely plain restored interior. Struck by lightning, a fire, there's no one there. By the time anyone notices, it's destroyed. Now stabilised at least, but on the register through the occurrence of a dramatic event that no one perhaps could have foreseen. But it's more likely that things on the register are incipient disasters, disasters waiting to happen. And tackling things before they get too far is an ambition. Actually, by the time something's on the register, it's already more expensive and more difficult to deal with than it would have been 10 years ago. We all know that. That stitch in time, that basic maintenance. The number of buildings, especially churches, that are on the register through the lack of basic maintenance over the previous 20 years is quite astonishing. Clearing gutters, you know, simple things like that. You know all that stuff. But the point is, the register points to incipient disasters. If we don't do something, something bad will happen. This is a pottery in the Midlands, 4 bottle kilns, grade 2-star, a complete factory complex, quite a famous pottery site. The photograph in the middle was taken in 2015. At the time, we pointed out to the owner that the water ingress through the roof there was eroding the trusses, the beam ends there, and that truss in particular was just relying on that piece of reinforced cabling. And sure enough, what happened 3 or 4 years later? That cabling snaps and half the roof is taken. So that photograph was taken this year, the one at the bottom. So incipient disasters. We begged, we cajoled, we persuaded, we tried to do everything to get that owner to put a prop under these bits of the building, but they simply would not do it. So it was something we could see coming. Last year, we reflected on 20 years of our Heritage at Risk campaign. And it's always good to have these landmarks to reflect, isn't it? It's always good to have these points in time when you just look back and you say, well, you know, is it working? What's working well? What isn't working? And it's a good year. It's a good year to think about that. So that first register, nearly 2,000 buildings. Buildings in an awful state, incipient disasters, the real problems, highly graded stuff that we were going to lose. Places like the former railway works in Derby, a mixture of grade 2 and 2-star buildings, the earliest railway works in the world, quite probably. The Francis Thomson station adapted to create this great engineering works, very much the sort of start of Derby as an industrial powerhouse. Derelict, miserable, underused, an awful symbol of the place when you came into Derby to see all this dereliction as you arrived on the station. It doesn't send a good message. On the original register, but after investment by Darby Ecology, a lot of great work by the architects involved. I think the project amounted to over 40 million at the end of the day, was taken out of the register. So an example of what seemed to be a hopeless case, what seemed to be something that no one would touch, a solution came up, and these fantastic buildings have been saved. The roundhouse there is just spectacular. I mean, it's the hub of the college, but it's used for wider events. It's used for conferences, it's used for meetings, gatherings, concerts, all sorts. There's actually soundproofing hidden in that building, believe it or not. And it's just become such a symbol of regeneration and life, the students milling about there. It's absolutely fantastic. So reflecting on the success of the register and that first register, over two-thirds of the buildings that were on that register in 1998 are now off the register. That doesn't include buildings that came on in 1999, 2000, and then subsequently came off. That's over two-thirds of those problems, basket cases, some people might say, actually have been sorted out, solved, and are now playing a productive role in society. And it's not just the ones that have come off, it's the ones where we've got some great progress, even in recent years. Torvale Mill in Derbyshire, a wonderful textile mill there, goes back to the late 1700s, 1790s. Absolutely fantastic that we've been able to give a grant to sort out the roof, and that works. Ed's involved with that actually. That will be going on soon. But the owner there himself has taken great steps and has invested in the building in the last 5 or 10 years, so now it's in productive use. He's got a factory in there. He's thinking of holiday lets, all that kind of thing. There's a trust involved. A great story. Not solved yet, but well on the way. That was on the register as a basket case in 1998. Bennerley Viaduct, this massive span, it's half a kilometre long. It's not just in Nottinghamshire, it's in Derbyshire as well. It's lattice ironwork, one of only 2 such structures that survive, closed in the 60s, but now Sustrans, then Railway Paths Limited, Friends of Bentley Viaduct pulled together. We've given a bit of a grant, and there'll be a project to create a routeway over that pedestrian and cycleway, and to repair and maintain that building. Who'd have thought that in 1998, that there would be a solution to a structure like that? But there is a solution. Part of the solution is our own grants. It's only a part of the solution, and we are highly selective. I'm sure to some of your frustration. I mean, a number of you have been working on projects that we've assisted with grant aid. It's never 100%. We always ask for match funding. We have to concentrate on the 1 and 2 stars, landmark grade 2s in conservation areas, so we chipped in with Victoria Mills there, for example, scheduled monuments, parks and gardens. We have to tackle work that's urgently required. These buildings are at risk. We emphasise tackling the at-riskness. We're not doing a full fit-out, we're not doing anything like that. It's roofs, it's key masonry, it's that sort of thing. No alternative funding. We call ourselves a funder of last resort. Urgent works notices, repairs notices, and I'll come on to that. But also management agreements for monuments, some capacity building to create an environment whereby people can start tackling heritage at risk. Our partnership schemes in conservation areas have been very, very important. And latterly, we've been very pleased to bring in a Heritage Action Zone initiative, which deals with high streets and places in urban centres. And this, we're very happy to have been awarded money from the government towards tackling high streets, British high streets. And the high streets HARs, which expressions of interest are being put in for now, will be very, very important. Not just grants, obviously we've got a raft of specialists, both in the regional teams. The list at the top tends to be in regional teams, and then we've got national teams that can come down and help the regions. And this again is in Grimsby. One of our national engineers, conservation engineers, has come down to give a bit of initial advice on the solutions to deal with a problem on the grade 2 star building there. Very important too, the technical advice and the guidance, and my colleagues are outside. Do go and have a look and have a word with them. Alex Evans, I think, is there. Charlie Harris, fire advisor. Alex is a structural engineer, will be able to tell you what they can offer. But their involvement tends to be broken through the regions. Putting out the guidance, I hope it's appreciated, I hope it's important. So that's kind of what we do and how we frame it. But like I say, increasing scrutiny on how we use our resources, how we use this precious public funding. And in 2017, Sir Michael Barber was tasked with trying to direct government to get more power for its buck. And he produced a report called Delivering Better Outcomes for Citizens, Practical Steps for Unlocking Public Value. Lovely, snappy title, but you can see where that's going. And he recommended use of the public value framework, which is a fairly sort of complex bit of work to try and explain and tease out just how you're delivering more public value. It's been made a bit more heritage friendly in this slide for the benefit of us dimwits in historic England that can't quite understand Barber in its unadulterated form. But you can see that there are sort of 4 pillars there that support the delivery of outcomes, and 4 things that you have to think about. And within those 4 things, there are questions, many questions that you have to continually ask about how your project at public expense is delivering public value. Like I say, it's quite a complex thing, but at the end of the day, it's trying to say, just fixing these things is not enough. There is a danger here that we get too self-congratulatory. It's important to us, it's important to everyone therefore, but that's not necessarily the case. We have to explain ourselves, we have to justify ourselves. We think these are self-evident truths. This old building is important, but it's been listed, for heaven's sake. So it must be important. That's not enough. The public at large doesn't understand that. And at times, maybe the government doesn't understand it as well as it might. So you can see these questions that are teased out, just in general terms. Why are we doing it? What is it delivering? Can it deliver more than the thing, the basic thing which it appears to be delivering? In the heritage world, we do have this system of expressing values above and beyond the statutory criteria. And it's this communal value, this idea of public support, public interest, public concern. And it's very often thought to be totally about monuments that are in the public realm, war memorials most obviously. But it really isn't. It's about all sorts of things. And why is that community interest important? It's important because no one grant source, no one body, whether it's us, the Heritage Lottery Fund, AHF, anyone else, private, is sufficient on its own. In most cases, a strong partnership, a strong community of sorts has to be brought together. And of course, we have to think about, in all this work, the future communities as well. And I would argue actually that it's that communal value, it's the communal value that runs through everything that leads to things being described as significant or important. If no one was interested in investigation, understanding the past, we wouldn't have the evidential value that we have. This is Newstead Abbey, monastic site. No one was interested in Byron, his story, no one liked his poetry. Again, the significance would be diminished. If no one thought that this romantic room was attractive in the country house, again, it would be a problem. So it's actually communal value that runs through all these things. And we have to think smarter about how to engage that community and the effects of our grant. This is Moulton Mill in Lincolnshire. I thought we were stepping in to sort out the tail fan, and it's supporting beams, which has prevented the tallest working mill in the country from actually working. It's an urgent problem. We fixed it with an urgent grant. We like to think we turned it around quickly. When we arrived, we realised what we'd done was actually keep a community hub working. It wasn't about repairing this building, which was tremendously important. We came, there was a wake going on, there'd been weddings there was a sewing circle there. In a place of dispersed communities, this was a real hub. We saved that hub by repairing that building. So that's the sort of thing that we've got to think about. I've added my own value here, nuisance value, and just the fact that how terrible it is for people to live in an environment that saps their soul, that saps their energy, that's decaying, they can see decay all around them. And the frustration is, although we know, and there are many examples that people love heritage and they've seen regeneration, convincing them again and again, somehow they don't believe it can happen in their place, that their place is somehow different. This is Boston in Lincolnshire, where Heritage Lincolnshire, the Heritage Lottery Fund, ourselves have been putting energy and money into a seeker scheme, THI scheme, doing up properties. And now we can show endless images of things like this, and endless case studies, and there's some brilliant reports. But somehow people just don't seem convinced. This is far from a scientific survey, but trawling through the comments after newspaper articles, the sort of thing that we see at Vic Mills and elsewhere, just gives you this sense of people not quite believing it can happen. And it goes from downright outrage, just a little bit of, oh yes, it's always us, isn't it, and our buildings are always falling down, why won't someone do something? And a sort of, you can see that it's chipping at authority, why can't authority do something? Here's hoping, but it's a long shot, to downright anger about it. Yes, pay for nigh local people to a private company, but can't afford toilets. And that's what you're up against. We have to convince people that what we're doing is actually possibly even more important than toilets. Very important to have nice toilets when you go to a place, but so is it important to have nice buildings, a nice environment, and somewhere that doesn't look as though it's about to fall down. So I think we need a lot more energy on this winning hearts and minds. We need to engage with this a lot more. We need to recognise that a large part of the population sort of cares and will say they love historic buildings, and 70 or 80% will respond to say, yes, we love them. They're talking about Clovelly, they're talking about York. They're not necessarily talking about their hometown. We need to engage much more with this and convince them of what's possible. and to just turn round that appeal. And what we're aiming for is the final comment there. You know, brilliant and inspiring crowdfunding appeal, worth watching. It's a starter project. It will enable the trust to do things. It's baby steps. It's one step at a time. Showing progress, showing movement, showing something, showing that other people care outside a place, showing that something can happen. And so it's only 22k, that won't even fix the doors. But it's a start. And overcoming that key statement, which is why I'll believe it when I see the scaffolding going up. Something happened on the ground. Hearts and minds is important, but occasionally there is a bit of steel behind that. And personally, I remain disappointed, amazed, maybe. I understand the reasons, but why is more enforcement action not taken at an early enough stage? The tools are there. We will help where we can. I know it's difficult, but very often this is the only way to get some form of something going, some step towards an ultimate solution, and to make owners realise that they're being watched, that someone else cares. And here's an example. In Derbyshire, it's a very early Francis Thomson railway building, grade 2 star. We've helped Borough Council. We've taken this up, political will to do it, great officers involved. They had served, had enforcement before, and the owner had just paid up at the end of it. Nothing was happening. So we've underwritten the costs of a repairs notice, then costs of acquisition. In the meantime, the Heritage Lottery Fund is supporting the Derbyshire Buildings Trust in a project to take this building into new uses. We're waiting for the CPO to be confirmed at this minute. And that's the sort of steel you sometimes need to back up these things. But again, people care. People care. If the council care, we care, Heritage Lottery Fund care, people are writing in, then government cares. I hope this goes the right way. I hope it's a case in point. We hope to have news about it. But it's that combination, the partnership between bit of steel, bit of money, of course, but also bringing people along with us. That's where I'm going to stop, because I can stare.